Right, I'm going to ask Colin Moynihan, the umpire, to conduct the toss, and how it works is that the challenger, which is Oxford in this case, Donald MacDonald, will make the call. Right, so away you go, Colin.
Well, with this 1829 sovereign, I'd be very grateful if you could spin it and Oxford could call.
Heads.
And heads it is.
What station?
We'll choose Middlesex.
Fine. Oxford or Middlesex, Cambridge himself.
So Oxford have chosen the Middlesex station. Thank you very much, Colin. So let's have a word with Donald MacDonald. Why that choice is the obvious question.
Because my coach told me to. No.
You think it's jolly good sense then, do you?
We think it's jolly good sense, if he thinks it's jolly good sense. Yes, Middlesex has the first bend, as everybody knows, and we think it'd be a nice idea to have that and see what happens later on in the race.
Do you think it's very significant, or...?
Frankly, I don't think the bends are too significant. I mean, they look a lot more significant from the air or from a following launch, but when you're in the boat, I think they can trick you.
Right. You're slight outsiders for the race, we're told. What are your feelings about that?
I think it just helps to relax the crew, really. Being underdog has an advantage. But we can only go one way, and that's up.
OK, let's have a word with Stephen Peel, the Cambridge president. Now, you know what it's like to lose, and you know what it's like to win in the boat race, don't you? Mm-hmm. And what do you think your feelings are going to be like today?
Feelings today? I'm just going to go out there and hopefully have a good row. It's fine by me. Conditions are pretty unpleasant, it looks like, but same for both crews.
Are you concerned about the conditions at all? It's not so bad at the moment, but they tell me it's going to get worse a little later.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't turn into a lottery. I hope it's a good race, and they certainly hope they're rowable conditions, but we'll go and we'll see.
And what about this station? You're on the Surrey side. Is it significant at all? Does it matter very much?
Very much doubt it. It depends. Depends what's around the bend.
Yeah.
And what's around that Hammersmith bend.
They tell me you've got some special equipment in your boat to bail out. Is that right?
That's right. So it's quite useful. Get rid of a bit of water.
Yeah. Will you have time to use it as the race goes on?
I hope so, yeah. Well, it just depends on the conditions, what it's like, how bad it is.
Well, good luck to both of you. Let's hope it's a good race and that the weather's kind to you.
It is.
Bowman is Hugh Pelham, who rode in the winning ISIS 8 last year in the reserve crew, rode number 3 then, now rows bow here. Former junior international, lives at Henley, reading engineering. 2 will be now the only American in this boat, Peter Gish. And he occupies the seat, number 2, that all the trouble was about at Oxford earlier this year. A postgraduate, a karate expert, and reading law. Peter Gish. Rowing at 3 for Oxford. Tony Ward, who stroked ISIS to victory last year. The lightest oarsman in the Oxford boat. A young man, Great Britain Youth International, and reading philosophy, politics, and economics. At number 4, Paul Gleeson from St Martin's School, Brentwood, and Hertford College, from a comprehensive school, and had never rowed until he went up to Oxford only 17 months ago. He's one of the people who's been moved in this boat. He was rowing at stroke. He's now seated at number 4. He reads engineering. And then at 5, we have Richard Hull from Wyndham College, Robinson College, Cambridge, a Cambridge graduate, as a matter of fact, but now at Oxford, taking a doctorate in biochemistry. And then at 6, the man you saw winning the toss for Oxford, their president, Donald MacDonald, 31 years old, the oldest boat race oarsman ever. A father of 3, lives in Oxford, and of course he's the man who's had to deal with all the trouble that Oxford have had these last few months. Donald MacDonald. 7 will be Tom Caddo-Hudson, who is on a medical course at Oxford, a former London University oarsman, extremely well known and extremely talented, and he'll be occupying seat number 7. Here he comes, and he moved up from 5 in that those wholesale changes a week ago. And expert opinion is that by putting Caddo-Hudson at 7 and a new stroke, there's been considerable improvement in the boat. And now finally, among the oarsmen, the stroke, huge man, giant of a man, Gavin Stewart, 6 feet 8 inches tall, 16.5 stone he weighs. He's both the heaviest and the tallest man ever to row in the boat race. And he was moved to stroke from the number 6 seat a week ago, and interestingly enough, the same thing happened to him last year in the reserve race. He was moved to stroke at the very last minute in the ISIS boat, and that brought about an ISIS victory. So will something similar happen perhaps this year? Gavin Stewart lives at Bournemouth, reading American history. And finally, Cox, Andy Loppenberg, Shrewsbury and Balliol. Oh, and he's got a mascot attached to his hood. Andy Loppenberg, who coxed ISIS to victory last year. Lives in Shrewsbury and reading philosophy, politics and economics. And that's the message to the Oxford crew. Go for it. Now, Cambridge. At Bower, Ian Clark occupying the same seat as he did in this boat last year. A member of Great Britain's National 8 and the lightest oarsman in either boat at 12 stone 6.5. He's reading veterinary medicine. At 2 is Richard Spink, who has had a few injuries to cope with on the way to this boat race. Calf and ankle injuries, a cyst behind the knee, none of which has helped, been out of the boat quite a bit. Richard Spink reading law. He comes from Sherborne School, where in fact they don't row. Number 3 is already seated. Number 3 is Nick Grundy from St Edward's School, Jesus College, who rowed bow for the Reserve Goldie crew last year. Former junior international, reading archaeology and anthropology. Seated at 4 already, we have Matthew Britton, who is only 18.5 years old and is the youngest boat race oarsman ever. A freshman, a very experienced junior oarsman, world junior silver medalist. And again, he is a man who's been moved from his original seat. He was at stroke until last week. Now he's been moved back to 4. Reading geography. 5, we shall have the president, Stephen Peel, who is in the blue boat for the 3rd year running. Stephen Peel, his 3rd boat race, always rowing at number 5. Again, a member of Britain's National 8, lives in Chester, reading land economy. And then at 6, the only American in the Cambridge boat, Jim Pugh, who rowed at 4 last year and moved to 6 only last week, again in a Cambridge shuffle. He's had some problems, illness problems. He's been down with chickenpox. He, in fact, rode stroke for a time in the build-up, but now at number 6, comes from Gladwin, Pennsylvania, reading law. And then at 7, another freshman, but an international oarsman, Jim Garman from Shrewsbury and the Lady Margaret Boat Club. Again, a man who's been suffering with illness in the build-up. He's been down with chickenpox and out of the boat for some time. So Cambridge have had their problems. This is Garman from Shrewsbury, only 19. At stroke, another former member of this crew, Paddy Broughton, in his 3rd consecutive boat race. He's been all around the boat in the actual race. He rode at 4 in 85, he rode at 6 last year, and this year he's stroking the boat, and he moved from 6 to the 2-stroke seat only last week. Again, a member of the National 8. And Cox is Julian Wolfson of Eton and Pembroke, who pipped Simon Loveridge for the Cox's place. And that little pipe you can see beside him is in fact part of the electrical pumps that Cambridge have cautiously placed in their boat.
Your first tilt at the umpiring business for the great occasion. I suppose you'll take no truck from them out there today.
Absolutely none whatsoever, especially in these conditions. One's got to be really quite rigorous about exactly how we're going to run this race today.
Yeah, of course you're well experienced as a cox yourself. When was it?
Yeah.
10 years ago, wasn't it?
Was, actually, yes. It seems even longer. But that's when I started off with Oxford and then went on to the squad and had a good run with them, fortunately.
Difficult to be impartial today?
No, no difficulty at all. I mean, I'm really keen to make sure this is a very fair race and that the best crew win. And I'm obviously very concerned about the conditions.
Right. After the toss, you had a little word with the boys. What
Yes.
sort of things do you say to the presidents?
Well, there are a number of slight amendments to the rules that I've put to them today. For example, if there is one crew that sinks, I think the other one should be able to take cover and not have to go through the centre arch of Barnes Bridge. This is purely safety reasons. I made it very clear to them that if the conditions are very bad on the start, I won't start the race. Safety must be paramount. And they have trained for a very long time. We must put the sportsman's interest first.
Yeah. How do you feel about it just at this moment?
Not too bad. It's marginally better than I would have anticipated. I hope we're going to get it off, but the tide is just turning, so we've got to wait and see what happens when we get wind against stream.
Can I reflect back for a moment to 1977 when you steered Oxford to victory by 7 lengths and had a bet on it, I believe, that you would win by 7 lengths?
I did indeed. I nipped up to the bookies just beforehand, and it was remarkably fortunate because it's impossible for the leading cocks to see how much you've won by. That's more determined from what goes on behind. So I won a few bob on that occasion.
Great judgment, then. You'll need it today, too.
I think I might need a little bit of it, yes.
All right,
Many
Colin,
thanks.
thanks.
Thank you.
Now, this year's race, of course, hit the national headlines very early on this year. There was a lot of trouble with the Oxford crew, and it all came about because of what happened in last year's race.
After 10 consecutive defeats, Cambridge took to the Thames last year without public bravado, but nursing a deep collective conviction that a decade of embarrassment was more than enough. And so it proved. After keeping Oxford waiting at the start, they left them trailing at the finish.
You can hear the applause as Cambridge approached the finish with a very impressive margin. They've won it, and they've won it by a long way, and they've won it deservedly.
The boat race has no compromises, no partial satisfactions. It has winners and losers. Oxford reacted to defeat by building their 1987 crew around 5 world-class Americans. But last month it became clear that the Oxford squad weren't all pulling together. Centre of the row was Chris Clark.
There is major disagreement over how the crew has been run and the fairness of it, and that's really the bottom line, just fairness. People questioning whether or not it's really worth rowing in anything if you have to compromise your principles to do so.
Clark was left out and the Yanks closed ranks. Oxford's president, Donald MacDonald, called up the reserves. Chief coach Dan Topolsky defended the decision.
Well, it's become now a matter of who actually chooses the boat, whether it's the selectors who choose the boat or the players. But it's got more to it, I think, than that, and it runs back over this year. And it's partly the price you pay for losing the boat race after 10 years, because all sorts of doubts creep in and people are not sure about whether we're doing the right thing. And that, coupled with a strong cabal of experienced people, so that everybody knows a bit about it and everybody has an answer, that's made the whole year quite argumentative and difficult, and we've had a series of problems right through the year. So I think that's really the basis of it.
In the aftermath of the crisis on the ISIS, not even a new sterling silver trophy from the sponsors seemed to lighten Donald MacDonald's outlook. Equally solemn was Stephen Peel, the Cambridge president, though with less reason. His squad's preparation, based on the schedule that brought an end to the dark blue decade, has gone well. The only disruptions have been caused by the inevitable winter ailments, but better to catch germs than throw tantrums. Peel himself will be one of 4 old blues in the Cambridge boat, men who know the exhilaration of rowing to the point of exhaustion and still feeling as though they are flying.
And these are the conditions at the other end of the course at Chiswick. And this is what they're going to be heading for. And the rain now is absolutely sheeting down. It really is horrible. And I don't know, will they get the race underway in these conditions, Chris? It's looking
I think
foul.
they will. I hope they don't have to try and start it in a squall like this. It really makes it virtually impossible for the stake boat boys who hold the stern of the boats to hold on to them. They'll just be blowing around in the wind.
Well, these conditions are as bad as, I don't know about you, because I can't remember them quite as bad as this.
They're certainly very, very bad. I rode one boat race in 1973 rather like this, and there we see the stake boat boys who are bouncing around, and they're in a much bigger craft.
And the wind now definitely northwest. Well, at least they're not making heavy weather of it, but I'm afraid the boat race crews are going to. The conditions really are foul. And it's a miracle to me that anybody can row on the River Thames in conditions like that. MacDonald, the Oxford president, is the first man to choose Middlesex, having won the toss, since 1974.
Yes, it was a brave decision. I suspect he thought that there was going to be more northerly wind in this than there actually is. I know that the feeling is that if the water gets very rough off the start, then the Middlesex station is definitely the one to have.
And that gives you some idea. That's looking from Putney back towards Hammersmith. And Cambridge now, rowing up to the stake boats.
After all the problems we've had this year, it seems that we're moving to some dramatic Wagnerian...
My word!
There is the Wagnerian climax, an enormous clap of thunder.
A huge flash of lightning, and then that enormous clap of thunder, which frightened the life out of me. And the water now here at Putney is very rough indeed. It's suddenly the white waves are coming up, and it's getting very, very choppy.
And we now have a fascinating balance, because Oxford have chosen the Middlesex station, and they're protecting themselves against just this sort of eventuality. And they will be able to choose, if they wish to go right over the far side under the Middlesex wall. But at the moment, it looks as if the white water is blanketing the entire course. The sooner the umpire gets this race off, the better chance it has of surviving the first 2 to 3 minutes, I think.